My name is Samantha Reyes. I'm 42 years old, and I've spent the better part of my life building not just a business, but a legacy of generosity and family values. I'm not a millionaire, not someone in the upper echelons of society, but I have crafted a life that I'm proud of, one that radiates the warmth of human connection, love, and support for those closest to me. That's why what happened to me shook me to my core. You see, family should be a sanctuary. It should be a soft place to land when life gets tough. But what happens when that family betrays the very fabric of love and mutual respect? When those you've poured your heart and soul into repay your kindness with contempt? This is a story not just of personal betrayal, but of a journey that transformed me from a generous soul into a warrior of justice and self-restoration. Growing up in a small town had its charms and challenges. My parents had instilled in me a sense of duty towards family. We weren't wealthy, but what we lacked in material possessions, we made up for in love and support. I was taught that family would always come first, a mantra that echoed throughout my childhood. My beloved husband, Michael Reyes, had mirrored these values. I met him in college, and he was my pillar, my champion. He appreciated my quirks, the small things I did to brighten our lives, even the meals I cooked. When I lost Michael nearly 4 years ago, a part of me shattered. The loss was monumental, suffocating. In the months following his death, I found solace in keeping our family close, pouring my energy into our gatherings. I believed that if I kept everyone together, I could somehow preserve the happiness we once enjoyed. It became a coping mechanism, a way to fill the void left by Michael's absence. I began hosting family dinners. My philosophy was that the kitchen is the heart of the home. I recreated every meal Michael loved, trying desperately to forge new memories in the kitchen that had once been filled with laughter. As the years flowed by, it was clear that I was not just helping myself. These meals turned into an avenue for connecting with family, serving as a reminder of our shared bonds in grief and love. My late husband had always encouraged me to help others, making me feel valued, needed, and appreciated. Whenever I walked into the kitchen, it was as if I was channeling his spirit. Each dish was a message, a love letter to everyone who sat at the table. My hope was that these intimate gatherings would keep our family strong. The holidays became our norm, filled with festive decorations, good food, and the warmth of shared stories. I cherished every moment, believing we were overcoming our collective loss together. However, underneath this surface, tension began to build within the family, a subtle current that I hadn't fully recognized. Eric, my nephew, was the first to hint that the family dynamic was shifting. He was the son of my sister, Linda, who had battled her own demons. While Linda had struggled in the past with her finances and relationships, she had remained steadfast in her loyalty to us, despite the hardships. Eric had become a product of this turbulence, privileged yet weak-willed, accustomed to fitting in with the societal elite whose opinions often overshadowed his own moral compass. As for Megan, his wife, she embodied the materialism that felt almost suffocating. Coming from a well-to-do family, she believed in the hierarchy of society based on wealth, prestige, and a cultivated image. It was evident from the outset that she held disdain for those who she perceived as lacking sophistication. My cooking, my background, everything about me felt like an affront to her carefully curated world. While I hoped that by welcoming them into my home, incorporating them into my traditions, perhaps they would embrace the values I held dear, something in their demeanor nagged at the back of my mind like an unwelcome itch from scratchy fabric. Little did I know, the rift between our families was about to widen drastically. It began that night, a night that I can replay in my mind like a haunting melody, each note sharp and painful. My family was gathered, seated around the table we had grown so accustomed to, laughter resonating off the walls. It was a festive occasion, and I put my heart into every dish, from the herb-crusted roast that had become a family signature to the sweet potato pie, which I infused with love and memory. But that night was different. The laughter was punctuated with awkward silences, and there was an undercurrent of discontent that echoed among the guests, especially between Megan and Eric. Tensions simmered beneath the surface like the unspoken words nobody dared to articulate. As the evening wore on and the wine flowed freely, I noticed Eric growing distant. His laughter felt forced, His glances toward Megan carried whispers of disapproval. I brushed it off, believing that maybe it was merely stress from work or perhaps just an off night. It wasn't until Eric leaned over, his voice low and wavering, that I understood. "Aunt Samantha, maybe we should rethink this thing." His words tasted bitter, stinging. What started as a palpable warmth flickered. The flames of our familial bond felt extinguished in an instant, replaced with dread. "What are you talking about?" I managed to ask, confusion knitting my eyebrows together. "Your presence at family functions, I mean." He hesitated, searching for the right words. "It feels outdated, We have other people we want to invite. You don't really belong in this circle anymore." The words stung deeply. I could feel my heart dropping, the room spinning slightly. I hadn't expected rejection from my own nephew, and certainly not this callousness, this lack of appreciation for what I offered. I hadn't considered the notion of my family dynamics evolving without me. "Other people?" I questioned, almost anxiously. The truth slipped through the cracks of pretense. There were other guests they preferred to entertain, guests who embodied the lifestyle they revered while I was merely an afterthought. As the evening came to a close, Eric announced with a rehearsed tone that he could no longer welcome my cooking into their lives. It was as if someone turned off the lights in the room. I felt exposed, stripped of my value, discarded as someone seasonally loyal but contextually useless. Walking away that evening, I felt haunted as I moved through my home without Michael to comfort me. I thought of the family meals we once shared, and for the first time, I questioned if my efforts meant anything at all. The future that lay before me was uncertain, grim, and dark. The emotional scars ran deep. Days turned into weeks, and the sting of the disinvitation festered in a way I couldn't have imagined. Family gatherings passed without me, each one underscoring the absence I began to absorb. I tried to carry on, burying myself in work, attempting to focus on the management of my catering business, which had grown over the years. But the weight of that disinvitation wore heavy on my heart. One day in particular, after another lonely weekend filled with missed connections and vibrant Facebook updates from family members, I received a phone call that would shift everything I thought about family. It was Megan, calling to check in. Her voice dripped with saccharine sweetness that made my skin crawl. "Samantha, dear, I was just thinking about how we never really get to talk. I feel like there's this wedge driving us apart," she said, feigning concern. For a fleeting moment, the hope that I once cherished flickered in my heart. Maybe this was it, a chance for understanding, for reconciliation. "Yeah, things have felt a bit off. I miss being part of the family," I replied, my voice tentative. But then she unleashed it, the final insult that would change our relationship forever. "Well, the truth is, your cooking just doesn't fit into our sophisticated lifestyle anymore, Samantha," she stated bluntly, her tone oozing condescension. "We're past that now. Our friends want class, not whatever it is you make. David comes from this prestigious background, and you simply wouldn't understand." That was it. The line was crossed. Beneath her words lay a deep-seated prejudice that reached beyond gourmet plates, hitting directly at the heart of who I was. This comment about my spouse had struck a chord, an aching reminder that within the confines of my family, there was an echo of judgment and superiority that I had stuffily hoped didn't exist. "Your sort of cooking wouldn't withstand any refined palate," she concluded, punctuating her sentence with a dismissive laugh. The phone slipped from my fingers as her words echoed in my mind. Anger surged through me mixed with an overwhelming sense of humiliation. How dare she? How dare they both? Betrayal cloaked me like an unwanted mantle. I froze in shock, feeling the numbing ice of her words ready to break through my skin. Michael's laughter faded, replaced with memories of our shared kitchen, the joy and creativity we poured into cooking together, the dreams we baked into every loaf. I had sacrificed so much to create something beautiful and lasting, yet here it was, rejected, discarded by those who should cherish it most. My days grew heavier with each passing moment. I felt hollow within, as if the candle burning brightly deep in my soul was flickering dangerously low, ready to snuff out at any moment. I reflected on my time building my catering business. I had poured my heart into it, sacrificing countless hours and financial resources to create a venture that resonated with my love for food and community. Weeks passed, and I felt the festering bitterness grow. Realizing that I had invested an astonishing amount into my relatives over the years, close to $50,000 in direct financial support, made my stomach churn. On one hand, I thought I was extending a helping hand, but really, I now questioned if I had become a lifeline for those who continuously took my generosity for granted. That evening, something inside shifted profoundly. This wouldn't stand. I wouldn't let their arrogance drive me into a corner. I needed to reassert myself. It was time to take control of my narrative, to dismantle the chains of obligation that ego had fastened around my ambitions. In a dramatic turn, I pulled out the old financial folders from drawers that had long been collecting dust, and I meticulously documented every payment I had made towards their comforts. Mortgages, loans, extravagant gifts meant to help them apparently advance their station in life. I could see the total gradually climb, a weighty amount marked with pain and resentment. As the last numbers added up, I felt my hands shake with realization. I had become a bank for Eric and Megan, enabling their arrogance without demanding accountability or respect in return. That night, I stood in my backyard, staring at those files as anger flared in my chest. I couldn't be complicit anymore. My heart raced. It was time for a symbolic act of severing ties based on obligation rather than love. I lit a fire pit, pouring not just the papers into the flames, but also every tear and every moment I had felt small or unappreciated. As the flames roared and consumed the embodiment of my diminishing loyalty, catharsis flooded over me, a purging fire igniting a newfound energy within me. As the ashes settled, I decided only days later to seize control again. It became a game, a tactic to ensure they understood their vulnerability. I resolved to feign compliance, permitting myself an opportunity to lure them into a false sense of security. Eric innocently texted me asking for a ride when they returned from a weekend trip. My heart raced at the blatant audacity they flaunted. Had they really mistaken my silence for weakness? I typed back, playing the role of the accommodating aunt. Of course. What time? I could almost hear their laughter and confidence resonate behind my screen. How foolish they were. They believed I still danced to their tune when, in fact, I now composed the music. As the promised time approached, I could barely contain my enthusiasm. I chose not to show up. I imagined them waiting impatiently at the airport, glancing at their watches and gradually giving way to realization. In my mind's eye, I could envision their confused, frustrated expressions. Would their arrogance allow them to call? I smiled at the thought. It wasn't just about them understanding my position, but realizing their need to respect the boundaries I was setting. For too long, I had been perceived as nothing more than an appeasement. Over the next days, I found a sense of empowerment in reclaiming my space, yet I felt the uneasy air shift. They would soon retaliate, and I knew it was only a matter of time before they struck back. True to my expectations, the mud began to sling. Just days after my absence during their airport return, a scandalous article appeared in the local newspaper. The headline read, "Local woman abandons elderly relatives during storm." I felt my blood run cold as I read the defamatory piece, my name smeared across the pages while they painted me as someone cold-hearted and ungrateful. The cruelty of the narrative struck at the very core of my being. I could barely breathe as I felt the tendrils of despair wrap around my chest. My family, those I had historically viewed as my safety net, had concocted a story that villainized me, crucifying me publicly while wearing a cloak of righteousness. I spent that morning in a daze, scanning through the article, piecing together which of my relatives collaborated in this mess of lies. Who among my own blood would betray me like this? Megan's need for social validation clashed violently with my own world, exposing the divisions that had silently grown over the years. My heart raced with a mix of fury and indignation. They believed this assault on my character would lead me cowering back to them, begging for reparations. Little did they know the furies they had awakened. Fueled by this newfound outrage, I orchestrated my response. Enough was enough. I pored over social media platforms, readying a statement dripping with my truth. I was tired of their skewed version of fictitious reality molding public perception at my expense. Upon reflection, I realized this entire debacle ignited more than just my determination to fight back. It forced me to unravel every source of latent emotion within me, knitting together courage I had thought lost. I showcased to the world who I truly was, finally letting my voice be heard above their clamor. As weeks passed, the public discourse surrounding the article swelled, tensions mounting. Eric had swiftly taken to social media, further perpetuating their story, amplifying their narrative to his friends around town. Gossip coursed through the streets like wildfire. Those who merely glanced at the headline would never know the truth. At last, the day approached for the family Christmas dinner. It arrived with an intense gravity, and I realized I was resolved to confront them, an uninvited guest ready to unveil the hidden truths they had avoided for far too long. Despite the nervous butterflies dancing in my stomach, I knew this would be the turning point. Stepping into their home filled with vibrant decorations and glistening lights was both daunting and exhilarating. The air hummed with anticipation, and as I entered the crowded room, conversations momentarily silenced. I felt the weight of their disbelief wash over me. Surprise and shock gripped their faces. I approached with steady confidence, determined to seize the moment as guests recoiled from the conflict that had been brewing for months. It felt like that fateful night months before came rushing back, and I would be the catalyst for unearthing the truths they had been hiding, both theirs and mine. With everyone seated, I took a deep breath, my hands steadying the shaking in my core as silence enveloped the space. I stood tall and began to speak, a cool composure overcoming me. "It seems mistruths have become currency among us," I began, my voice unwavering. "I held back my truth for too long. This quiet reserve will not shelter your lies. You approached me with disdain and a false sense of superiority, but within these walls, I will expose the ties that bind us, and they will no longer hold me captive." Once my words spilled forth, there was no turning back. I distributed my evidence, detailed accounts of everything I had furnished them financially over the years, evidence of the manipulation that had clouded our relationship. I revealed the absurdity of the article they fabricated, confronting them head-on about their cunning schemes. As the annotations slid around the table, the atmosphere shifted drastically. Their expression morphed from disbelief to discomfort, making way for uncertainty. This was the moment that marked their downfall, the start of understanding that irrevocably altered our familial framework. The guests started to murmur, eyes darting between me and Eric. "Look at this hypocrisy," I continued. "You, arrogant and elitist in front of my generosity, you believe societal advantages can replace love for a genuine connection. You think it makes you better." Suddenly, the fabric of their comfort unraveled. They externalized their views of superiority into a shield against the real issue. The comfort traced in their privilege was rupturing before all to see. All the pain I had fathomed fragmented into truth. The intensity of the atmosphere thickened as guests participated in the dialogue. "How do you reconcile being part of the family when you've effectively severed the ties?" a distant cousin asked, her brow furrowed. I responded, answering their collective inquiry, elucidating the need for openness and accountability. This wasn't merely a one-sided condemnation. It was a conversation calling for resolution. A chance for Eric and Megan to take responsibility for their actions, to acknowledge the depths of their betrayal, and to appreciate the humbling impact of vindication. As the evening progressed, unraveling their tale continued to transform the mood. Guests leaned in, eager to understand the narrative, their walls drawn closely to self-preservation shattered among the flames of honesty. Each attitude met with my conviction transformed into a deeper understanding of our collective failures, not just their arrogance, but the systemic patterns of negligence towards the family bounding us, those that I had fought tirelessly to uphold. By the end of the night, I felt a profound sense of relief, the complexities of betrayal behind me as steps toward resolution unfolded. Eric and Megan melted among their peers, humbled and perhaps a little broken, while I had emerged from the chrysalis of pain, emerging as something much stronger. They had thought my love and patience would last forever, but that single event forced them to confront the consequences of years spent evading responsibility. The guilt permeated the walls in their home, souls exposed to a movement of accountability that saw them progress from comfortable adversities to painful acceptance. As the night waned and guests departed, Eric lingered behind. With a tremor in his voice, he mustered, "I never intended for it to go this far. I apologize, Aunt Samantha." There was a hard truth in those words, a newfound understanding buried beneath the chaos and confrontation. But my heart weighed heavy even with his apology. "Eric, the truth is not about apologies. It's about understanding not only what led you here, but recognizing the consequences that stemmed from your choices." I instructed him that real reparations would only come once he acknowledged both the damage done and respect for familial bonds fostered by love. Until that point, I remained firm. My support was no longer theirs to command. In the weeks following that night, the social media backlash began to settle, but I retained an unwavering heart. I chose to surround myself with people who cherished authenticity, love, and meaningful connections, those who would take part in enriching journeys, not within the confines of approval dictated by class and prestige. Navigating this new path gave me a welcome sense of empowerment. I no longer allowed the malice of others to fester in my thoughts, nor would I put myself through a cycle of tribal warfare cloaked in familial affection. The lessons I learned were invaluable. I wielded the power to shape my identity, to articulate boundaries, and to foster my sense of worth beyond material labels. As part of my healing journey, I began reaching out toward others who had suffered the same types of emotional trauma, encouraging them to share their stories, to find their voices among the societal pressures that sought to bind them into silence. I recalled my own struggles and embraced the vulnerability of shared pains as a path toward healing through collective journeys. Through the prism of betrayal arose newfound friendships, ones imbued with authenticity, understanding, and joy without the shadow of condescension looming overhead. As I felt life blossom again, I rediscovered my love for cooking, honing my skills in ways that were less for presentation and more for pure joy and connection. I ventured into food courses, indulging in culinary art that reignited the creativity I had lost in the years gone by. I embedded these values into teaching classes that invited others to share their culinary stories, weaving together bonds that bridged gaps forged by classism and prejudices. In celebrating food, I found a richer tapestry of experiences. Sharing meals with friends who respected my journey made every bite feel like an embrace. Cooking became not just a means for nourishment, but a route for healing. Looking back now, the experiences that shattered my heart became ingredients for the transformative journey that blossomed into my new normal. I learned that family is not solely defined by blood, but also by those who genuinely honor you, cherishing the essence of compassion. Still, their relationship lingered unfinished. In a way, I understood that Eric and Megan were not wholly devoid of love or connection. They had merely lost their way. Formerly charmed by privilege, they waded through arrogance, facing the tide of resentment that had coiled within them. Months passed, and then there came a time to reassemble. They reached out again, cautiously welcoming the possibility of reformation and dialogue. The conversation that once felt so lopsided began to shift toward mutual respect as we navigated truths both spoken and unspoken. I offered them a chance, a conditional bridge built with genuine intentions of moving forward while highlighting that the past is a prologue to the future. Through this journey of pain emerged heartfelt efforts to rebuild, a realization that our shared roots can thrive if watered with authenticity rather than social expectations. Although the road remained unclear, I no longer felt the necessity of carrying the burden of blame or fear. I chose to cherish the intricacies of life and the flavors found when it entwined souls together. The journey wasn't merely about family betrayal, but about self-reclamation and the path leading to closure. Every struggle carved new valleys of strength, enabling me to embrace the core values that ultimately fostered genuine connections within a society obsessed with hierarchical constructs. Love, once misrepresented, could thrive when aligned with the understanding of justice and respect. This narrative illustrates that sometimes the most painful betrayals define the contours of our character, nudging us towards profound self-realization. The journey of familial complexities flushes our identity with shadows, but gifts us an opportunity for enlightenment that blooms in its wake. Sometimes it's crucial to stand tall, to reclaim your narrative, to burn away ill-gotten expectations, and to carve a path that is undeniably your own. As I reflect on this journey now, I encourage you to embrace your own struggles and consider which relationships truly nourish your soul. Each one of us has a choice to redefine boundaries, to construct a foundation anchored not in familial obligation, but built upon love, sincerity, and the unwavering pursuit of personal truth. Have you ever realized that standing up for your needs could reshape the landscape of love and connection? Have you found your way back from betrayals of the heart? I want to hear your stories. Let's foster a conversation that heals through shared experiences.